What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 20th Century Geek. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and it's that time of year. It's the Christmas season. More than that, it was our Patreon quarterly choice. So we put out a poll on the Patreon, and if you're curious about going to the Patreon, it's www.patreon.com/20cg media. It's 20cg media. Go check it out. Anyway, the poll went out. I asked my pollsters, my patrons, what they wanted, and we got a movie commentary. We're going to do a Christmas movie commentary. So I reached into my sack and I looked up what heartfelt Christmas message movies are there that we could have picked from. It's a Wonderful Life, Home Alone, any number of versions of A Christmas Carol, and I came back with one that really does mean something to me, and I think is something that comes back to the heart of Christmas. For many people, Christmas doesn't start until the Hans falls. For me, and for my family in this wonderful house, it's not until the Deagle is launches, I should say, sorry. So today, we are going to be going and doing a commentary for Gremlins, that wonderful Joe Dante classic. So sit back, relax, and if you're ready, watching along, and I think you should be, because it's a Christmas classic, we are watching. I've got the WB symbol up and ready, and I am now going to be pressing play. So ladies and gentlemen, join me as we watch Gremlins. This film's a 15, which, you know, as a kid, I watched way too young. This film gave me nightmares as a kid. And I have proper vivid memories of being in my bed and the pulse beating my ears. But me thinking that pulse in my ears against the pillow was footsteps in my room. And I remember waking up, hearing this pulse, getting more and more scared, more footsteps, and racing out of my room to tell my parents that Gremlins were coming to get me. So this film had a big impact on me. So at the start of the film, we have Ron Peltzer in Chinatown in Los Angeles, I assume it's supposed to be. I'm never sure if this is appropriate or not. This exists, you know, Chinatown. And they've gone for this really sort of like this sort of closed-in sort of look. It's got this great lighting. It's got a great thing. It feels like a set, but that was the 80s for you. And I love some of the stuff in the background. See, this is the kind of thing nowadays, if we did this, as Ron Peltzer's walking through this store, you'd have a bunch of Easter eggs or gags in the background. And I think this probably should have been done now, like the Ark of the Covenant would be sat in the background, or and this was done by Warner Brothers, so maybe sort of like like a wand or something. You'd have some gags for other properties in some way. That'd be quite cool. The Bathroom Buddy. Here we go. So we've now got the Bathroom Buddy. What a wonderful device. I ain't gonna lie, right? Because Ron's inventions aren't great, but the Bathroom Buddy isn't the worst idea. I mean, it's not well designed. It needs other things. I'd probably sort of be like looking back and rolling back the amount of stuff that's on there. But if you take a Swiss Army knife for travel kit, it's not a bad idea. In fact, I bet you could probably find something similar to this or akin to this today. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this. The other thing to note is obviously Ron wearing his Trilby hat. The design of this, the whole design of this film, this is something I've always been curious about. The design of this film is interesting in that, but how to describe it? They use It's a Wonderful Life as a reference point later on in the film. And obviously he's wearing this sort of trilby. The look of this film is meant to be timeless. Excuse me. It's clear that this film, although very much set in the 80s, the small town, which I can't remember the name of it now, is supposed to be that sort of like small town America set slightly aside. And Ron Peltzer as a character is supposed to be a bit more like someone, I don't know, late 40s, 50s, that sort of like inventor style. Even the Mogwai to me feels like some throwback to not so much monster movies, but what Gremlins do, I suppose, of that era. Creature features and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's an interesting concept, this idea, the look they designed for him. This idea again of buying Mogwai, like this is the sort of the bullish American way, and this is one of the things I find interesting about this film is like it's very much about American arrogance. Sorry for my American audience, but this part in particular, like the guy saying to him, like, you know, yeah, it's not for sale, and there's a reason for that. Okay, this idea of coming with much responsibility, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. But this idea of sort of like someone just says you go into a shop, and you see it now. If you go into a shop and there'll be something there that say not for sale, they'll have some really cool thing there. Like, we've got this on display, but it's not for sale. Do not touch or whatever. Like, you have to respect that. But like Ron, and it feels like a generational thing when you just walk in and go, yeah, I know you're saying that. I know it's not saying not for sale, but everything's got a price, hasn't it? Everything's got a price. Everything's for sale in this day and age. And you sort of think, well, no, it doesn't. Like, you know, none of this would have happened if he'd have just sort of not been this bullish idiot. And the kid also needs the money. They've got to pay for bills. 3 rules. There we go. Let's cover the quick 3 rules. Out of the light to the nocturnal animals. So, because I'm always curious as to where gremlins came from. Don't get them wet because they multiply. So they live somewhere dark and dry. Right, that's one. Never feed them after midnight. Now, this rule is actually picked to pieces in the second one a little bit because there was always midnight somewhere. So how do you do that? And what if they've got something stuck in their teeth and they pass like a time zone? Because time, let's be clear, midnight time is a human construct. It's a false construct. Like, we measure time based on the rotation of the Earth and the passing of the moon and the sun, blah blah blah. We have applied a measurement, a construct, a measurement to that. But like, animals don't get that. Like, you can't say to a dog or a cat or a cow, you know, can you please come back here at sort of 5 p.m. or like, oh, make sure you're back after, you know, just before midnight. Like, they don't care. They don't understand it. You don't have a physical. You cannot have a physical constraint based on time. Time just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. That one's always been weird. It's the weakest of the rules. What I would say is, in the novelization of this film, and I will be mentioning the novelization a couple of times, they actually give a full breakdown of the Mogwai origin, and they tell them where they come from. It is off from China, but they also suggest they are from outer space. So Mogwais are actually, or the gremlins are actually alien. And so that's actually, I recommend the book. I do recommend actually. So, you know me, guys. I love my movie novelizations, and so I do recommend checking it out. And I'll be referencing it again later on. A couple of things on this. Jerry Goldsmith's score for this film is balling. Like, I absolutely love the score of the film. The Gremlins theme that comes up later on, and throughout the film is spot on. And the other thing in this film as well, which is sort of like, was my real first introduction to him, not just Joe Dante or that, but like Dick Miller. Let's call him Richard or Dick Miller. There was a documentary about him. He's one of these actors, a character actor that just appeared up throughout the 70s, 80s, into the 90s. Died not too long ago. Here he is, Mr. Fudderman, Dick Miller. So good in this. Appears in so many things. He's been The Howling, well, loads of films he appeared in. But yeah, Kentucky Harvester. and this is the thing about this film, because this film, right, it gets like, it's fun. I love this film. This film is an out and out satire. I posit that this film is a satire on so many levels. So like, Mr. Fudderman, Dick Miller, represents this sort of like the old school. Like, he fought in World War II. I don't know how old he's supposed to be. Probably not. I think he's supposed to be sort of like late 50s or 60s. He's supposed to be retired, so I'd assume in his 60s. But this idea that he represents the old school, this idea of like, you only buy American, Kentucky Harvester, and this this thing about the Gremlins being in World War II, and that he says about Billy's car, and about the comics as well. When he says, "Hope to see your comics in with little Abner," and so they don't run those anymore. He's the backwards facing. He's the fearmonger, and he is sort of like, to us today would be like the boomer, that sort of generation, sort of that baby boomer generation. And I just find it fascinating that, like I say, that has that, because you're going to get Mrs. Deagle in it, who's also sort of representing sort of the Miss Potter from the It's a Wonderful Life. That sort of like the unencumbered small town capitalist overlord who will always make people's life a misery. That is like, do you not know who I am? And he's just vile to people throughout, because they can be, because they own so much of the town. And sorry, just drinking my tea. And it's not lost on me in the fact that William Peltzer, Billy, works in a bank. Much like, so there's loads of, this thing has got so many, I think I made this preference this sort of note last year, that so many, this has so many connections to It's a Wonderful Life. Like, Billy works in a bank. It makes clear that she's watching, his mum's watching It's a Wonderful Life later on. Mrs. Deagle is clearly sort of a stand-in for Mr. Potter. And so, now you've got, oh my God, what's her name? She's so fit in this. She's absolutely stunningly beautiful. He becomes his girlfriend later on. She's like 80s beautiful. But anyway, this idea that she wants to close places down because it's a dive. It's this elevated idea of what the small town America should be. And what it actually is. Like this dive bar. It's not really a dive bar. You see it later. It's actually just a bar. And everyone sort of had this memories there, and it's loaded. It's so sort of intrinsic to the town. It becomes so incredibly important. And you hear the more stories about it. So she's the evil incarnate in this. And this is why I think the Gremlins themselves, and we'll get to this, but the Gremlins themselves aren't evil per se. They are dangerous, but they're not intentionally evil. See, this scene here. Sorry, so Mrs. Deagle being presented by the Bob Cratchit, or the poor family of this area, not able to pay their rent, about to get thrown out to make money. So she's there to make money. She's there she's about to throw this family out on at Christmas. She's intended to throw them out. They are like a Bob Cratchit. So you almost think that this film could go a very different way. This film could have gone down this sort of Christmas Carol, It's a Wonderful Life. Like, this film, the whole first act really presents all these attempts and all these sort of like staples of what you'd expect for a typical all these sort of typical things for that sort of like lesson learnt Christmas story, that people will learn something from this. However, all those people that should learn something don't, because they are taken out in some way or another. You are presented with these sort of characters. You get Mrs. Deagle, you get Mr. Fudderman, you get Jerry, played by Judge Reinhold soon. These are all the characters that will probably be, these are capitalist characters, or sort of old school Americana characters. The Scrooge stand-in, which I know is a Victorian England thing, but by the by. And Billy is there as that sort of the Jimmy Stewart sort of stand-in. He's the relatively progressive. He's forward-facing, but he's sort of naive. He's good, although a little dim at times. And so what you get is this idea of like all these people should be visited by, or visited on by this chaos, by this event, and it should change their view on Christmas. That should be it. It should be this thing of grouping together. But what you see in this is the chaos descends, and they don't. And then they don't learn their lessons, and they are presented then as, this idea. It's quite a dark satire on that they won't learn their lessons, so they have to be taken out. Especially with the thing with the bank, anyway. I mean, she threatens to kill a dog. How can you... but she's a cat owner, right? Not saying, but I'm a dog person rather than a cat person. But this film also suggests, quite rightly, but this film also suggests that you have to be a prick in order to get on. So you see all the people that, in the higher up and the more senior people in the town are all knobheads. Like, I've just said, Mrs. Deagle, Gerald, who you're meeting now in the bar. But when you meet the police later on as well, like, they're all just like this thing of like, you have to be a bit of a dick. All the nice people in this are all the sort of the regular Joes in this film that, like, are willing, usually downtrodden. But I mean, they're in the bar now. It's going to bother me now. What's this woman's name? But they're all ambitious and this other stuff. So it's interesting. There we go. So a quick look at this. And it's again this idea of the future. Phoebe Cates as Kate. But this idea then of, like, he says there about, we're looking to the future. The future is this. He's sort of like, the greed is good. What is this, from 84? I think it's 84. Is it 84, 85? 1984. So this is the start of that greed is good era. And I think what you find is, like, what I find is that Jerry represents that big he's got that big coat with the fur coat and stuff. He represents that sort of element of 80s America, the yuppie America. But you're still more about this small town. This is more like the gathering of a small town, and what it is to be a regular person. Sorry, just drinking the old tea there. So yeah, I find it interesting that this film is very much in line with that sort of thing. Yeah, we're doing good. Here you go, look, so she's sat in the kitchen. His mum is now sat watching It's a Wonderful Life. Now, she's watching the end of It's a Wonderful Life. And again, I'm going to say, like, she's shown to be looking sad, but that's the thing. But, I know I do this a lot. For me, I think a better part of this, if she's sort of meant to be, watching this, would have been, to make that link, would have been a much earlier scene in the film, would have had, Jimmy Stewart's character standing up to Mr. Potter and have him watching that scene, because that would have mirrored some of the scenes, or there's a couple of similar scenes of Mr. Potter against Billy, sort of, I think it would have been a nice little sort of mirroring and sort of paralleling of those story elements. I like the fact you get the more of the inventions here. You get the egg cracker, which, again, like, everything that he invents is actually a really good idea. Like, every time, I remember as a kid, I remember seeing this and going, that's not a bad idea. It's those things in theory and practice. Like, you need the engineering skills to do it. I don't think it works all out. But, like, I'd like to see that work. Because I think, like, someone, the right person to have it, I think you would end up with a really good invention. So there's the other one later on, the juicer. So here you go, father home. So it becomes this idea of the father being home, the sort of travelling salesman. Again, touching into these old American tropes. This idea of the salesman on the road is very much an American door-to-door salesman. You don't really get them in this country much. But they are very much an American thing, and slightly European as well. I like this. So we're going to get the introduction of Gizmo. So he's wrapped it. I want to know how long he's wrapped it for, because it's like in a box in wrapping paper, and so it's a small animal with no air hole, no air holes in it. I know it's not real, but still, that's not the point. So this is light sensitive, which is interesting. Look, he's got a remote dimmer for the lights, which that works. So there's a couple of inventions that do work. But right, anyway, let's focus on the introduction of Gizmo. So we've got this wooden box, which is his carry box. Barney the dog. I wonder how many dogs they got to play Barney. Because I love Barney in this. This thing, it jumps up now. Oh, he's got a whole head. So the dog actually wants to go. The dog who's playing Barney wants to go for whatever it is, the puppet. So this must have been interesting for a dog to be like, oh, what the hell is that furry little thing? Now, I ain't going to say this, because this is obviously some of those greats that got together. This is written by Chris Columbus, directed by excuse me, directed by Joe Dante. Oh my god. And then produced by Steven Spielberg. Like, this is some of the greats of the 80s. And it shows on screen because the special effects on this, don't forget, like, this is 84 again, so let's be honest, there were no computer effects in this. This is all practical. So each one of these things were built. And so what I remember is, so Gizmo, this thing, there was like different sizes of Gizmo, of the Mogwai. There was this little like hand puppety one that he's got in his arms, and then they had one that was like 6 feet tall. And they did all this the real like that had massive animatronics and stuff, and that was then used for close-ups. So when you see some of the close-ups, and I can't remember which ones now, but you see them later on. Some serious close-ups. They had this big one, and maybe not 6 feet tall, but at least 4 or 5 feet tall. And so that's how they did these things, with scaling and models and all these other things. And that's why it was almost, And also, it's just to say, I mean, Gizmo has an awful lot of screen time, but some of the others, they have the other, I don't know, it's like 4 or 5. When Gizmo multiplies, like, they don't get a huge amount of screen time. They're on for like a couple of minutes at most. None of them particularly in detail, other than maybe Stripe and one of the others. Yet they are still all built with such love, care, and sort of, detail. It's so well done. I always look back at films like this from this era where they've really dedicated time to the models, and you go, that's amazing. Like, just the way that they move, the attention to the fur, and the sort of the way his ears have got look like. They've got veins and stuff in them. They look. I mean, also they've made them adorable. Like, they've gone for the rule, haven't they? Sort of big eyes and a large head to make him. So that thing, like, yeah, there you go. There's one where he's flashed, where he's sort of dazzled. There, that's the big one again. So yeah. So they've used this idea of the modelling, this idea of the puppetry. It's absolutely fantastic. Like, this is a lost art in my opinion. And the fact he can talk as well, like, it's this babying effect. Like, Gizmo is adorable because of this babying effect. Like, he has the sort of like, bright light, the squeaky sort of cute voice, and also his sort of this bit where he's getting treated for having bashed his head. Is this little sort of stroppy face that he has. They've made him super cute, and he's got a little button toes. I think he's adorable. Like, I used to have a Gizmo, not a real one, obviously, like a plushie. God knows what it is today. But yeah, I think this. I can't say enough good about this puppetry, and it gets better. There's also some stop motion work later on. And I think there's only like 1 or 2 scenes where I'm like, that doesn't quite work for what you're trying to do. But for the most part, I think the special effects in this film are like top notch. 90%, 95% of them work. And it's sort of people have said like how I actually saw before I started watching this. I was just flicking through some things. There's quite a few people like, this film hasn't aged well. But they didn't say what elements, and so I'm curious to see what elements haven't aged well. Because for me, I think this film has aged incredibly well. I also think, as I say, that I think this film has been misunderstood for years. People have just sort of bobbed it as a bit of a, like a festive horror comedy, and ignoring sort of some of the satire elements that come into it later on. I love this as well. Corey Feldman, as one of the kids from the town, having to deliver Christmas trees, dressed as a Christmas tree. Like it's the dumbest costume ever. But yeah, I can imagine. Again, it's one of those things I can just imagine. But I love the, like you say, I'm assuming school must be out at this point for him to be doing this, like working for somebody. Fair play, but again, fair play to him. Like, you know, this town works. Although they're not out. Must be a weekend maybe, but because they actually have a scene for the end of school, don't they, later on? So he must be at school or something. Here we go. So this thing has an old thing for old films as well. Oh wow, I've just noticed that. So as he's watching this Clark Gable race car movie, takes a sudden kind of guy, which obviously comes... That's the big version. So this version here again, sat in bed, is the big version again. That's the close-up version. So you've got this Clark Gable movie he's watching. See, you can tell because they've got much more detail, much more puppetry going on in the face, gives them a lot more emotion on those close-ups. Anyway, he was obviously watching this thingy, and obviously it comes back later on. He's also got a poster for the Road Warrior, so Mad Max, the Road Warrior. So again, this idea of when he races the car later on, he's been influenced by this idea of action movies. I also love, this is an interesting thing, something that I think gets missed, has been lost over time. Billy's a nerd. Like, Billy is a full-on nerd. He's a geek. I love him. Knows he's sort of like, he's fucking akin to it. Like, not only is he sort of enjoys cute animals, like the Mogwai, he has posters up in his room for all these different films of sort of different things. He's got comics. He draws fantasy characters. There's a reference to D&D in the background in his room. I'm trying to see if I can see it. So yeah, he's got all these things for these old films, like. But this is a time when, what's this? Here you go, Marvel Comics. He's got on his desk. Was it Marvel something? Anyway, he's got these things. Billy is a geek, and this would have been. He would have. It adds to this thing of being the outsider, of being the nerd. It's quite a brave thing to make him a hero. Frank Frazetta art all over the place on the desk. Right, so this is horrific. Gizmo, Mogwai, giving birth now. And this is how these things work. So you add literally just add water. And little ones pop out. Conan comic, DC Conan comic there. Or Marvel Conan comic, sorry, with the DC underneath it. What we get, though... and I struggle with this because today I'm looking out the window now. I'm watching this on my laptop, and I'm looking out the window, and there's a proper foggy, misty day. So that air out there is wet, like it's proper sort of like naff. So Gizmo, like Mogwai, you must go to like a really dry climate for him to exist. So taking them to sort of like Middle America where there's loads of snow. Even San Francisco, that's the other problem. Like, it comes from San Francisco, like Chinatown, San Francisco. Like, that's where Ron, his dad, Ron Peltzer is at the start of the film. It's notoriously wet there. It rains quite a bit. It's got fog banks and stuff there. Like, how does he keep it dry or keep it away from moisture all the time? And also, what do they drink? Like, do they need moisture? Like, is that the only way they can do it? Like, do they eat things that then give them sustenance and water? Don't know. They are alien. I mean, that's the thing to realise, they are alien, so maybe it doesn't work. This is it, like he pans across them all here, and they've all got great detail in, but they're also but they're not designed to be all thing. Like, I think you can see that some of them are being puppeted, some of them are automatic. This one at the back here seems to follow a motion. Scrooge! See, there you go, look. Going back to this thing about Scrooge, look, A Christmas Carol, where Corey Feldman is on the bed, the comic sort of sat next to him is a Disney's Ebenezer Scrooge comic. So this is going back to this idea of sort of Wonderful Life, Christmas Carol. Like, they want you to keep that in mind, firmly in mind, when you're watching this. What what does it say? Toxygen 90 in frequent use. I wonder if that's I'm going to see what that is. Like this again, like background. Let's just quickly Google that. Toxygen 90. There we go. Toxygen 90. Here you go. It's actually the first thing is a Gremlins reference. References you probably missed. So there you go. Right, I'm going to see if I can find it now. Toxins on Behind Randall Peltzer was created by crew member Jay Davis to keep nosy people away from the Gremlin puppets. The studio's fire marshal received several complaints from passers-by worried about the non-existent chemical. So it's a completely non-existent chemical that was used to scare people off, so they didn't go and look at the puppets. Excellent. And that's a great little reference. I kind of like as well that they're all playing different games, and that Barney just lying there like the others. See, straight away, here's this thing again about this idea of the capitalism. Ron Peltzer's first assertion should be that, look, this could be what, you know, every kid in America could want one of these. We could sell these, which goes back to another film 2 years later, actually 1986, Little Shop of Horrors. At the end of the film, it's Jesus Christ, Rick Moranis' character is approached to sell Audrey 2. You know, it's the Audrey 2 to be sold all across America. Every household wants an Audrey 2. Same thing, this idea of sort of like in every house in America is a bit of a phrase, isn't it? Having this in every house in America. So this idea of having a Mogwai in every house in America, like, it's part of the American dream, isn't it? This been idea of being able to sell something that becomes a national product. You know, something in every house in America, driven by this idea of capitalism. So the dad in this is no better than some of those other people we've seen. Ron is no better than sort of Gerald or Mrs. Deagle, because if he was able to get that kind of money, he would definitely do those things. And again, it's this thing of the older generation sort of being quite strapped up in this stuff. Now Barney, I don't know how they did this with this dog. And again, I know there's like this idea of puppetry, but that does not look like a puppet. That looks like a real dog. I could be wrong, and I'd need to understand that. But a dog wrapped up in these lights. So we know that obviously wasn't Mrs. Deagle. It was, you saw it as it was Stripe, as they were going to bed, smiling about it. The electric hammer. That's another one. Kind of like that as a good idea. Peltzer. I like the fact that he's got a brand as well, Peltzer. So this is the Peltzer coffee maker. But there's already a coffee maker exists, so this is a bit of an unusual one, because in many other cases, like he wants to be able to make something that doesn't exist, like the bathroom buddy or the electric hammer, the fly swat, all these things, like the chemical thing. Oh, and it's powered by a, what the hell is that? Passion fruit? Star fruit? It's something here is being powered by something fruit. This goes back to this idea that things can be powered by potatoes. You know, you can use them as a battery. So science experiment thing. There you go, look. So Corey Feldman is still in school. So when is he doing this job delivering Christmas trees? It must be an evening and weekends job. I'm going to take it as that. So now they're going to show him again the irresponsibility of this for science. Fair enough. And this is where I sort of feel less sympathy for for Billy, because they have the. So is it Mogwai? No, it's not Gizmo he's brought along, is it? It's one of the others. Because he's now produced another one. So they can all do it. It's not just like there's a father one that produces it, which we learn later on, because it's Spike that jumps into the pool. But you now get two. And how quick they grow. They are sort of like, able to sort of communicate and pretty quick. Like, look, that's seconds, and it's now stood up and communicating with the other one. That's fascinating. The other thing I wanted to say is this set. If you look over Billy's left shoulder now, or right shoulder, sorry, no, left shoulder, sorry, yeah, you can see a cinema in the background. In a film, in a year's time, a DeLorean's going to fly down that same street and collide into that cinema, because this town is also going to twin for, or parts of this town are going to twin for Hill Valley, and it will also then appear. We talked about them in one of the first episodes of Twilight Zone, and I forget where else it appears, but yeah, this is Hill Valley. It's a set, part of the Warner Brothers set, that was used frequently in different ways. So some of the interiors and exteriors were used in different ways. Here we go, Mr. Fudderman's initial thing about Gremlins. Foreigners put... There you go, Gremlins have brought down the planes and the big ones. WII. I wonder about Mr. Fudderman, like, 'cause when he has a drink and this stuff, and there's all this bitterness. Little mini gremlins. There's something like there's a xenophobia and a racism to Mr. Fudderman. Like that's the point, isn't it? There's this sort of isolationist, supreme isolationist idea. This idea of America first. Like Mr. Fudderman would vote for Donald Trump. There's no doubt in my mind about that. He would also believe Q, like no doubt, like he believes conspiracy theories. He's a bit thick, but the thing is, he not only that, he represents that sort of core of America, like America is great, but this mistrust of the rest of the world, that everything foreign is out to get is lesser, but also undercuts. It's not this idea of like a rising tide helps all ships. It's you have to sink everybody else's ship in order for us to rise. That he has that sort of mentality. One of the things I'm curious about for all this is the relationship between these two. So between Kate and Billy, they've clearly known each other for a while. Like he's supposed to be in his early 20s and this other stuff, so he's not that far out of school. I assume he may have gone to college, may have not. But this idea, but she's alluding to, she's talking about how depressive people get it and the suicide rates going up. She later gives the explanation as to why. She tells the story, and we'll get to that when it happens. But I've always assumed that they've known each other for years. Like, is she not from this town? Did she? Oh, I think I've just made it. So it might, because I always like to assume they went to school together and stuff. But maybe. So I'm going to add some headcanon in here. So Billy is has lived in this town his entire life. Like he's been here as a kid. He went to school here. He now works at the bank. He is the Jimmy Stewart character in this. I get a feeling that Kate and her family, her mum at least, moved to this town after the events of what happened in the first film. Not the first film, sorry. When she gives this information about what happened to her when she was younger and her dad, I now think that the family moved to Kingston Falls after that event. So that's why he doesn't know about it. There you go, I'm adding that in. That's not even covered in the novelisation. I'm adding to the novelisation. But yes, she's so pretty. I mean, I always wonder why she left acting. Did she leave acting? I don't know, but yeah. I forget her bloody name again now. She's such an 80s face. Phoebe Cates. Like, I wonder what she did. Did she do? Because I always remember from these 80s films. I'm just looking, like she's done a load of stuff. I mean, she still works. No, 94, 2001, 2015. So she's not worked for a long time. Because Drop Dead Fred, Gremlins 2, like yeah. Phoebe Cates, I wonder why she must have stopped acting for a certain purpose. Yeah. So much looked into. Oh, she married Kevin Kline, and she has 2 children, so she doesn't really need to, I suppose, which is a shame. But yeah, good luck. Well done to Kevin Kline. Here you go. See, this is another thing where they like to reference things with the movies in this. So you've had It's a Wonderful Life, telling you the kind of story you're supposed to be watching. You've then had Clark Gable's neat. You've then had Clark Gable's racing film, and now you've got the original invasion of the Body Snatchers, and the pod people. So you get this thing of the pods, and so again, then while the Gremlins are not replacements for people that exist in the town, they are not pod people. This isn't an invasion movie. What we do have is creatures that represent our worst base instincts that then sort of are coming through pods. I mean, it has those image of the pods in his loft later. So this is what this film does that I think is so good. Is it does start to show... It foreshadows everything. Like, it tells you so much up front, and it's really clever at doing it. And I think that's good. Again, like this other thing of up close. You get these are the up close ones where they're eating. They clearly don't have one. They've got several. They've got several of them, but these up close ones are really big, and there might even be people in them. I'm not sure, but it's just incredibly well done puppetry. It gives them much more muscle control, much more sort of like, you know, those bags and the airbags, or what they call bladders. That's what they're looking for. That did all the work. So it's really good, really clever stuff. One of the things here is another one up close. So it's just they did these massive sets to do some of this. A brain just sat on the table. Amazing. I think one of the things that I'm interested in is obviously all they've now ate after midnight. It's now, what you can see there, it's 2:20 in the morning. But one of the things to go back, if you go back to Billy Room, like Gizmo says no. Like he sort of has this feeling of like, no, I'm not hungry, I don't want it. What would happen if, this is a big question, what would happen if Gizmo became a gremlin? Like if Gizmo transforms from a Mogwai to a gremlin, like, you know, does that change his personality? Does he become vicious? Don't know. Interesting stuff. Also, it annoys me that he doesn't know, that Billy doesn't know how, doesn't know what time it is. He's watching Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which the original film's about an hour and a half long, maybe an hour 40. It's 2:20, so he put it on after midnight. So he must know the time. So, you know, poor on Billy, bad timekeeping. But then he is this naive sort of character. Okay, so the morning after, we've now got the pods. These things have been formed. These sort of pupae, these sort of chrysalis, and again, fantastic design. Before, following Alien, you've had Alien, I suppose, 1979. So before Aliens, though, with the feels of them, you get these things, and they look great. These used to freak me out. But one of the things I'd like to, you know, how did they form them? Like in this thing of one of the things that I'm also curious about is the old Chinese man who also would have given him Audrey too. So again, like, you know, that's a weird link. But the old Chinese guy at the store, that he, you know, and he says, you know, there's a responsibility. He's clearly gone through this before. Like, he's known that this is going to happen, hasn't he? Like, he knows this stuff. He's seen Gremlins. And I'm curious about that story. Where's the prequel story, eh? Where's the prequel book or the prequel short film that tells me about that young Chinese guy that had to go through this event in a Chinese village somewhere? That'd be awesome. So again, see, this is clever as well. I love that you introduced the science teacher, which makes sense. And he's able to give you this sort of explanation, give you the exposition as to why these things happen. And I think it works really well, because it's sort of like, you need it, but I'm glad that they have it. And it actually works pretty well. Like, he's not just a character who just happens to know this stuff. Like, he is a science teacher. Like, he's not a professor, he's not like a scientist per se, is like, he is mobile technology, there you go. But he is a science teacher, which means he's this stuff about metamorphosis and pupae and chrysalis. Like, he knows all this stuff. There was Steven Spielberg going past in that little thing, Robbie the Robot. So there's some interesting stuff going on here. Like I say, if that's the scene where he's at the convention, there's some stuff going. There was a H.G. Wells time machine in the background. You've got Robbie the Robot. Steven Spielberg goes past on a wheelie cart for some reason. There you go. Look, the time machine's now disappeared. That's interesting. There's some good stuff, and that sort of seems completely different tonally to the rest of the film. Even the president of the bank is scared of Mrs. Deagle, which is always fascinating. I love the way she pushes in just to be mean to so many of the people. Like, she's vile. She's the kind of villain that you just love to hate. She is a proper villain, like Cruella de Vil level villain, isn't she? But it's clear that like nobody in the town likes her, but they clearly have this. She has this control over them. This is one thing you learn about hearts in this. It shows you this idea of like an elephant's heart versus a rabbit's heart versus a mouse's heart. It shows you how fast it's one of the only things you are shown on video on this that doesn't pay off, or at least doesn't influence the way sort of like the film works. I could be wrong, but let me have a think about that. But I don't think it does. So again, like, this is where this video probably could have been something about butterflies changing or moths, or what are these things about the use of cacti, bloody hell, chrysalis, to how they sort of morph and change from a caterpillar into a butterfly. That would have been a really good use of it. It's like, he's been influenced by what's going on, so he's showing the kids. The egg's now hatching, because this is interesting. Like you say, there's the life cycle of a gremlin. Let's just quickly talk about the life cycle of a gremlin. So a gremlin, or even a mogwai, so whatever you want to call them, they are produced in the form of whatever parented them. So if Gizmo, as a furry little mogwai, gets wet, he produces more mogwai. They produce, but those mogwai then follow the same rules. If you feed them after midnight, then they become gremlins. If, however, a gremlin gets wet, it then produces more gremlins. And so that's sort of like, that becomes them in their final form. And only two, so those three rules only apply to a mogwai. Because the third rule about feeding them after midnight does not apply once they become a gremlin, because they've changed into their final state. But when they get wet, they produce more gremlins. So those gremlins don't need to go through a mogwai phase. So really, the mogwai phase only exists because of Gizmo. But if you were to wipe out all of the mogwai but keep a gremlin, you would only ever get gremlins later. So it's an interesting sort of like, I wonder, I know it's an alien, they're aliens, I know it's not been real, but like, it doesn't make a great deal of sense from an evolutionary sort of standpoint. Like, what purpose? Oh no, maybe. Like we'll say, what purpose does the mogwai phase serve? What purpose does it serve? I don't know. Like, they're cute. Is it so they get parented? Is it because they don't seem to need that level of support and parenting, much like any other sort of mammal would. They don't need to be sort of raised for a period of time before they sort of reach adulthood. They seem pretty much ready straight away. So So it's interesting, like, you know, there are other things where other monsters they've given a life cycle. Alien, for example, the xenomorph has a pretty specific life cycle. Tremors, the graboids have been given a pretty specific life cycle. Yeah, but Gremlins is a bit mixed up. Like, I wonder if, like, where do they come from? Like, is there more to them? I know there's an origin story in the book, but not a full explanation. So is this, when's the first time we see a gremlin? So you're in the schoolroom now and you're seeing sort of like, you're hearing the footsteps and seeing things knocking around. But this isn't the first time you see a gremlin. This is the first time he sees a gremlin. So this is the first time someone sees a gremlin, isn't it? Now, do you see his hand? I think you do. I think this is where you're about to see his hand. You go, yeah, I mean, he reaches for the candy bar. So let's have a look. Okay, is he going to do it? No, so you don't. So he puts the candy bar in. So they do. They hold back. So again, like, it's another thing I like about this film. They hold back on this. They're pretty restrained on what this is. There's a reveal. So when is the reveal? So he's being bitten. Have a safe and happy holiday. So the school's out. This is probably the week or so before Christmas, isn't it? So when do we get to see the first gremlin? Is it the one that jumps out the cupboard? So again, this is where it starts to lean into the horror. We are now about 50 minutes into the film. Right, 49:26. It's now just gone past in the film. And you've had no horror. Like, it's been small town. This is the turning point. This is like Act 2, I suppose, going to the height of Act 2. This is where it starts to lean into the horror. This is where this film started to really freak me out as a kid. The hand here gets the phone. Oh yeah, this is so well done, because and I think about this a lot with films. I'm trying to think of who it was that said it. Like, if you're going to do a horror comedy, it's a bit like with Ghostbusters as well. Like, the horror, that's a continuity error. If the horror needs to be taken seriously for the comedy to work, and for the horror to work, the comedy needs to be taken seriously. You need the two to be work as a sort of in tandem. Like, you can't always mix the two. Like, if you're going to have a horror comedy, the horror needs to be straight horror. And in this, like, although the gremlins can become funny later on, like, they are still legit dangerous. And there's some funny moments in this film, like, even as the gremlins grow, like, you know, there's some really good moments. But this moment here of him, his hand's been ripped open. This is it now. When the gremlin sort of like comes out of the cupboard and attacks Billy. There you go. That moment there, the first time you see one, it's just a flash, and you know, that's it. You get a glimpse of one, and then it throws to a bit and it runs off. You just get this notion of sort of like, they've changed. What the crap was that I just saw? I know, because I've seen this film a million times. But this is it. This is the moment when it goes. You now see, so you still haven't seen them in detail, but you see the things they're doing. So you get a slightly blooded Gizmo on a dartboard who gets hurled down a laundry chute. But this is where you see them for the first time, and her cookies are crap, by the way. She's making gingerbread men and they don't look good. Yeah. This bit here, this is when you first see them, and this is where, like I say, this whole scene of her, like, if you were to transpose this into a different film, or even to take this from the moment she walks upstairs, you could edit it slightly, take out the Gizmo bit, but this scene of Billy's mum in the house, in the kitchen, around, if you were to transpose this is what this film's 15. It's got its horror elements. It works as a horror. Like, it just works. Like, you see the eggs are broken. You know, you see these things, and you know, it's she answers the phone. Like, there's panic. There's real worry. phone home. You know, like they have pop culture references straight away. Like this is where this idea of, you know, when people say, oh, it's loaded with nostalgia and loaded with references. This was 1984, and yet we've had like a convention with, like, you know, a Time Machine, Robbie the Robot. We've had an E.T. reference. This one's, you had an Indiana Jones reference at the start of this film with Rockin' Ricky Rialto. This film's loaded with pop culture references, especially towards the end. And how they managed to get bloody Snow White signed off for this thing is baffling. That's amazing. You know, that's a different era. It was a different era. Like, you know, that's so I've never noticed that there are handprints in the dust on the stereo. So the music's now playing a Christmas song, but there are handprints, gremlin handprints in the dust. Little details like that are so good. I've never noticed that before. And it's not, you know, it's not one of those things you always notice, but on the film set, it was important enough that, having watched this for 30 odd years, like, that's important for someone. So, but this thing here, this moment here, so someone's just thrown something at her from the kitchen, and you get the shadow. Like, it's played for laughs. Like, this has got the same Looney Tunes humour, you know, that you expect, which is ramped up in the second one, but is so well done here that sort of, you know, it feels that looniness, but it's still legit horror. Yeah, you see that these things are dangerous, and the first full reveal of a gremlin eating a gingerbread man, and it's so well designed. Like, it's lizard-esque. It's got the shoulder plates, the ears that move, they fan up and down. The scaly skin, the little, even up to the buds on its feet, the little sort of like shell-like tail. Oh, it's got caught in the blender. So that the first one gets eaten, it gets pulled into a blender and splattered. Like, there is that green blood. Like, there's no messing around. This film does not mess around. Neither does Billy's mum. Billy's mum does not fuck about. Like, you know, don't mess with Mrs. Peltzer. She's ace. And then, like, this next one, like, so she attacks this one here, throwing plates at her. It's laughing. It's the way, like, she, like, you know, this the energy with which she's attacked. Like, she's killed one in a blender. She's just knifed one. She's just knifed one to death. Oh my god! I've never noticed that before. He's now lying in the background with the knife still in him, wriggling around on the thing. So she's pierced him to the thing. Now you've got the one flea and tick killer. So it's a pestilence killer. He's been forced into the microwave, and he explodes in the microwave. So in a period of, let me just check this out. So from 52-ish, where she goes up to the stairs, to 56. So this is a 4 to 5 minute scene of just full on violence. You know, she's just killed 3 gremlins in that period. Like, this tells you firstly the sort of, like, whilst they're a nuisance, they're not, at this point they're not hugely dangerous. Like, in a proper horror film, they'd have butchered her, but she takes out 3. So it's in small numbers. Like, it recognises that they're small. And this is the problem with, like, Chucky, isn't it? I know people say this, like, what would you do if you were attacked by a killer doll? Well, I'll just kick it and run, like you would. And so this film recognises that they're only like a 1.5 foot tall. They're not huge. And so it's not this is where this is the same with zombies, isn't it? That sort of thing with the slow moving zombies. So I'll just run away. It's not hard when they're on their own. When there's one of them or even 3 of them, you could probably tackle them. They're not hugely dangerous. They're, you know, like, you wouldn't want to get messed up with them. Oh, I've never said that before. Like, you know, there's Spike hiding in the tree with his glowing eyes. When they're numbered, it's more about the numbers. So when Spike finally, it's not Spike, it's just the other one. So when so when they're on their own individual, they're a nuisance. They're dangerous, but they're a nuisance. Like, this one almost kills, isn't it? It chokes her with tinsel. So they, you know, you can't beat them all, but he does get his head chopped off in a second. This is more about numbers. When the town is overrun later on, and this comes back to the pod people thing. Like, this idea of the pod people, it's about being overwhelmed. And again, like, this is where you could take this as being, if you really wanted to start digging into this idea of the satire, they come from China. They represent, at least in the eyes of America, foreign animals, foreign sort of dissidents, foreign whatever. And so to have a few in the mix is dangerous, but not. It was a nuisance, but not dangerous. But to be overwhelmed is the true danger, is the true horror when these things overrun you and they start to sort of infiltrate American traditions. So that's the true nature of this film. Or maybe I'm wrong, or that's what I can take from it. Is this idea of the gremlins represent foreignness, the fear of foreign. I don't think this was the point of. I don't think Chris Columbus is a racist, or Joe Dante, or Steven Spielberg. This is a satire, and I think you can take it as that. Most definitely, you could just take this as a monster film. This is just a creature feature, like a horror film in that sense. But you can quite easily sort of look at this and go, oh yeah, small town America being overrun, and one of the most heartwarming. Most of the most heartwarming and sort of middle America traditions of Christmas, this small town Christmas, is this idea that being infiltrated is really important. It's dangerous. That's where the fear is. This idea we're going to lose middle America because of being overrun by these foreign concepts. Our traditions being corrupted and taken over by these sort of elements. Now, you could also say, if you wanted, there's other ways of looking at it, you could say that they represent capitalism. Like this idea of they were bought and sold, and so, this idea of they represent rampant capitalism, this idea of like Mrs. Deagle and Gerald and all these people, they are the cause of this. Because Ron's just as bad. Ron Pelter is just as bad as them. This idea of wanting to sell them, everyone in every home in America. Again, this idea of small town America, like losing our values to something new. This idea of commercialism ramping up, and so that's why you get again. Is it hard to say this idea of commercialism? Because this idea of them watching Snow White at the end, or being pulled into a single place, becoming mindless, violent gremlins taken over by impulses. There are arguments to be made that that's what this film is actually about. It's not about just these little. They represent something, and Billy is sort of like the defendant of small town America values, of our old school American values. Why is it not Gerald that sort of Jerry that gets becomes the hero? And here we go, holding his nose. So you've now Stripe has just jumped into the YMCA pool, and it's bubbling like a bitch. So if a little drop, and I love this look of you've seen what happens. A small jar produces 5. A drop of water produces 1. How much does a pool create? And I love the way it looks, the way it bubbles, and the way it does this thing of the smoke coming off it. A great effect. But I love the way Billy's like, fuck this, I'm done, son. I'm out. Yeah, you are out. Like, there's no way. Boom, 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 boom. It doesn't show it here, if I'm right. No, it doesn't. But I think it's later on. Because again, like, they would keep going as well. Like, if one was birthed, this is the interesting thing. If one's birthed into the pool, does that one then start birthing? Do they have to reach a state where they're still birthing? But later on, when you get to see them gestating in the back of Spike, later in the pool, where you see the little ones. Here we go. The 2 police officers, the usual. The two local police, local police, sheriff and whatever. Isn't there a reference to this at the time? Is it when Corey Feldman calls in later on and they make reference? Is this like the last Christmas when you called in about this, called in about that? So see, they don't start out like that. Well, they do. That's the thing. Spike jumping in the pool. They weren't Mogwai. They all come out as more gremlins. So They don't start off like that. Oh, yeah, they did. Okay, this is the bit I was talking about. This is the bit where there's some. This bit here with Spike is claymation, and it looks like claymation. Now, is it bad? Not really, actually. No worse than other claymation, but it's on just long enough to work. There we go. So the Fudderman house. Right, Murray? So this is the Fudderman house. And this in itself could be a sitcom. You know, this is that sort of like life with, you know, was it like wife, married with children, that sort of thing. So this thing, idea of an earlier, that TV is massive. Damn foreign TVs. Xena, so I love that. Xena, I don't know if Xena exists anymore as a manufacturer. I love the fact he finally gets a foreign film with subtitles, which is probably like the worst thing for Murray Fudderman to find. Their house is fascinating as well because it looks like a decorated barn. It's a really interesting sort of build. Our place. So there's, you look. I'm trying to look at see if there's anything else like where this was built or whatever. But these American, it's a big house as well. Like it's a farmhouse, isn't it? Because he's obviously a farmer of some kind. I assume so. Anyway, I've always assumed that the Fuddermans were a farm. That's where he's got the plough. Otherwise, it just makes no sense. But this bit here, where it comes through the Kentucky Harvester, it's his fears realised. He's literally said gremlins. It's his fears realised, like his Kentucky Harvester, his American product overtaken with foreign gremlins, and coming after him, specifically coming after him and his house, his family. It gives him PTSD, but this is exactly what he's been talking about. So this is where I think like the hero. Oh my god. The hero of the film obviously represents, I think, a sort of a more progressive ideal. But he's also a traditionalist. That's the other thing, is like Billy is a traditionalist. Like he represents that sort of thing of traditionalism. But this film seems to be getting more I watch and more like, oh, it's got a slight conservative bent. But that's sort of like the fact that Murray Fudderman was right. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be trading with the rest of the world. It just means you've got to be careful. Having the mail thrown back at him. So it's now a little series of vignettes where you sort of, this is where the horror has gone. You've had the horror moments, like the kitchen scene, and also the invasion of things, like the invasion of with the tractor. It's funny, but has that tinge of horror. This is where we start to lean into this idea of the horror comedy. You start to get like the funny. I love that the post. This guy, the one playing with the traffic lights, is hilarious. The thing as well, having Gizmo and Spike suggests to me that there is a sort of like Spike is like an alpha gremlin, like he is a leader gremlin, and Gizmo isn't. I wonder if this, because he looks very much like the others. And I wonder if there is this sort of thing of, if you were to look into the sort of social grouping of gremlins or mogwai, there would be like an alpha one, the leader of the pack, natural sort of thing. And then this is obviously, Gizmo was survived because he wasn't an alpha. Interesting. Here we go. It's where they start getting all the calls in about the craziness that's going on. Sorry, this is the thing about the Fudderman's house. Someone's crashed through the Fudderman's house. There you go, the Fuddermans have been... So there's a freak accident in the Fudderman's house, and he's going like, it's obviously the gremlins. And even now they've seen Gizmo, they're still like, this is nonsense. But it tells you that this idea, this notion of authority. It's always in films you see this. Like the authority figures can't believe the hero, But then, often there's this frustration of going, "Oh, yeah, why can't they just believe him?" But let's be honest. If you were in the same position, would you believe someone that came in and sort of started saying this stuff? Even if you then heard a coincidental incident, would you have that? Oh, okay. Well, you must be right. Like, I often think that with these sort of authority figures, but yeah, of course you wouldn't. That's nonsense. So yeah, the police in this, like, they are bumbling and stuff, but they're sort of, it makes sense. I accept it to an extent. Right, we're now at the Mrs. Deagle estate. Now, this is one of my favourite bits. Like, she's clearly a cat woman, property owner. She's an estate agent, like or a real estate thing. She's got a sign there for open house. She's obviously owns some of these things. And again, like, this idea of making it, when you see the other houses you've seen everything's like lighter wood, lighter wallpaper. She's got dark wood, much more heavy wallpaper. Like, it's supposed to look a lot more Victorian to me. Like, she's supposed to look like the Scrooge. I hate Christmas carols. So no soliciting. So, like, here you go. So yeah, this is hilarious. I love this so much. The gremlins sort of looking down, especially when they're wearing hats but nothing else, or earmuffs on the side of their heads that aren't even covering their ears. I don't know if that's puppetry, but the way it's been held, like the way, again, the gremlin messing with her seat elevator. This bit here, there's something interesting in this bit. Like, she's terrified of them. So they've come for me, right? So that tells me she's religious in some way. And a lot of her, she's got her hair tied up, so she obviously wears a wig the rest of the time. But she's obviously had this fear of that her behaviour is evil. Here she goes shooting up. This looks so much fun. And there we go. Fly, Mrs. Deagle, fly. And boom. And there we have now had the launching of the Deagle, and Christmas can start. That's killed her. Like, there's no doubt about it. That's just killed Mrs. Deagle. I always assumed that the Fuddermans were killed. In the tractor thing. They obviously come back in the second film, but Mrs. Deagle's clearly dead. This is where it goes over to that next level. Like, they're also attacking Santa, and they're not sure what they're doing to him, but they're biting onto him and sort of like, there's some that are more vicious than others when it comes to gremlins. But the police are now seeing it, and they're not doing anything. They're proper scared. Not prepared for this kind of thing. And again, I like this idea. And I wish we had more of this there was more British or European horror that approached this idea of sort of like small town, small village. You've seen it with like Hot Fuzz does it with action, which I think is great. But like, this idea of like rural horror, that sort of thing. I think there's some good stuff we could do there, like be able to contain it. But again, like, Corey Feldman holding his own there against them all, and this way the police car now crashes. Does it turn over? Let me just wait and see. Because their brakes don't work. The brakes have been cut by gremlins. Excellent car crash. This, bloody hell, into the insurance thing. So boom! So someone's died there. This is where it starts to go crazy. This is one of those things where when you watch these films like this, like Gremlins or Poltergeist is a good example, or the Monster Squad is another good one, where you have like a supernatural element or something happen to a small town, and then sort of like, it goes like, how does a town get past this? Because you've now got, like, Corey Feldman ringing into Rockin' Rick and Rialto to say there's little green guys, and they do say there's like a mass hysteria. They sort of like, at the end of the film, I think they sort of say it was a mass hysteria and something or other. But like, it's that thing of like, how would you get past this reality? You've seen something, and like, people are telling you that you were crazy. I always think it's a shame that was never addressed. Like, you didn't go back to Kingston Falls and they're like, oh no, this town is messed up. A bit like what Halloween Kills sort of tried to do. Now, I think Halloween Kills overplays it. I love that film, but it overplays it because I think the killings that Michael Myers did in the first film is a small thing. Like they kill like 4 or 5 people, but this film like wipes Gremlins. Not only it's not just a human in a mass killing people. Like they're a supernatural entity, and they wipe out pretty much a town. And I'd love to see how that is sort of like, you know, addressed and covered up. And this idea of sort of like, you know, someone like Fox Mulder or the X-Files going like, you know, oh well, we've actually got a list of these of where they've happened throughout the world. This, you know, we've got records of incidents of gremlin outbreaks here and here and here and that sort of thing. That'd be really cool. But especially during World War II, official records of them. I don't know if is it In the Shadows? There's a film recently with Chloe Grace Moretz, which was all right. It was pretty good. That's got gremlins in it, and that was an interesting World War II sort of feature about a gremlin sort of taking out a plane. Anyway, now into like Dory's Tavern, and this is another one where sort of we're getting into this mix of horror and comedy. Like we realise that these things are just our worst base instincts. Like you see some of the things that's going on. You know, heavy drinking, smoking. Like the one's got like 4 or 5 cigarettes in its mouth. And there's something you can see the sort of the wire on its arms for the puppetry and stuff. But they're laughing at each other. Like this is just debauchery, you know, sort of like all the drinking, the smoking, the dancing, and now there's going to be a flasher one. I love the fact that he's a flasher, got the flasher coat, but all the other ones are naked, so it doesn't really matter. The tummy expanding like this when he gets to the jazz table. The thing is, I see that this is no different to some university parties I went to, or what I would expect college parties to be like in the States. So it's that thing of like going, yeah, is it this is bad, but is it really sort of like, you know, it's probably not the worst real party that people have been to. But again, it's that idea again of this small town being overrun by something. In this case, we're now looking at vices. You know, they sort of like, they represent the vices. You can take it in that sense as well. This scene represents all the worst possible vices that can then sort of perpetuate in a small town America. Alcoholism, drug dependency, sort of, you know, just, you know, partying all the time, all that other stuff. Really, you know, preventing any sort of productive sort of society. This cool jazz go doobie-doo. It's just like these jokes are just sort of going. But this is what I'm saying. Like, it's not a focused satire. It's not like a Verhoeven, RoboCop, or Starship Troopers, where it's a sort of a focused satire. You know, like where the gremlins actually represent any one thing. But I definitely think like you can take all kinds of bits and pieces from this, to suggest that the sort of, you know, the gremlins represent this. Because they are just having fun for the most part. I mean, they're not big, like, you know, but you go into a room full of them, I'm pretty sure like you'd probably get hurt, but they are just there to have fun. Like they are literally just sort of doing whatever, that, you know, food fight or hurling things around. Like the one now putting his finger into a plug socket. Like this thing of endless curiosity, endless sort of debauchery. Like it's not good, but it's still not the worst. Do you know what I mean? So that's an interesting one. This is an interesting point because he's already been smoking cigarettes, but he's scared of a match. But he's not. He's already been smoking like 4 or 5 cigarettes. How were they lit? That's interesting. But yeah. So I just think these ones in the bar are the ones that I'd want to see because they're sort of the most interesting. Although you do get one that's a terrorist one in a second, which again, mid 80s America. Is it a terrorist one? He's got like a balaclava on. He's got a handgun. So it makes me wonder, like, is he supposed to be just a mugger? Maybe, I don't know. But it's interesting. Like, you see, like it does things like the comedy in this, like the slapstick comedy in this is fantastic. It's just, yeah, like, you know, he's not. Yeah, Saved by the Lights. It's always the lights. And again, I could make all kinds of analogies. You know, sort of their fear of the light means that they are darkness. You know, much like I've been reading it recently. The comic The Darkness, in the 90s. But you know, it's when you see the town's reaction of everyone running away, when you start to think, this is a town. They've got guns. They've clearly got guns because the gremlins have got hold of them. Some of them. So people have got them. So it's again, you're like, why is it not? Why have people not like clubbed together with sort of like, here you go, trust, savings and trust. So which is the sort of in It's a Wonderful Life. It's the saving and loans company, saving and loans bank. So it's so supposed to be like it's a shitty life. See, they've taken out the bank, you know, for no purpose, but like it makes you wonder sort of like, what have they gone after? What have they smashed up? Why have they gone after the bank? What was the purpose of this? Exactly, there you go, just like Mr. Futterman said. So Mr. Futterman has clearly said that these things exist. He's now been validated and quite possibly killed by a large Kentucky harvester. Here we go, we're now going to get the story. Kate's story as to why she hates Christmas. So this is a story all about how her life got flipped and upside down. So how her father decides that he has got himself a bunch of presents, done this other stuff, and they've been decorating the Christmas tree. Doesn't turn home, and he decides to come down the chimney to surprise them. And how they had to wait several days over Christmas for him. Didn't turn up, they missed him. Didn't turn up for Christmas Day, didn't turn up for Boxing Day. So literally they've go through the new year and into the new year. So the family really struggled. This is what adds to the sense that I think they left wherever they were living to move to Kingston Falls. So she went to light the fire, which hadn't been lit for a while. Noticed the smell. This is a tragic story. It is a tragic story about how her father slipped and broke his neck whilst falling down Yeah? Can I just say that how absolutely fucking stupid you have to be to think that this is feasible? Like, you know, maybe, again, like, I don't know all American architecture, I don't know, but I can guarantee you could not do this in a chimney in any relatively modern home in Britain. Even old, if you go and have a look at a lot of old homes, you will actually find that there's like a bit of a chink, so it will go straight down at an angle and then down again. And it's actually that for a reason. I think it's part of what creates the airflow that pulls everything out of the building. So it's not possible to do this. And so to have tried it is possibly the stupidest thing. So it's one of those things of like, you go, it is tragic she had to see this as a kid and that she lost her father to an incident like this over Christmas. But you do go, well, you know, Darwin Awards and all that. I'm sure. In fact, I'm pretty sure if we were to Google this, you know, in fact, I'm going to try it. Men dies in chimney dressed as Santa. Let's see. Man dies in chimney as Santa. There you go. Brief history of people getting stuck in chimneys and dying. So on Vice.com, there is actually this is a thing that happens. More than just gremlins. This is. Yep, it has happened. So I do mock it, but still, it has clearly happened. And obviously we had chimney sweeps and that sort of thing, which is different. But like, yeah, so people have tried it. Don't do it at home. Anyone. It's a stupid idea. I do love them walking through this town. Going back to the actual film, I do love them walking through this town scene set. I mean, one of the things I've been thinking about quite a lot lately is set designers and set construction workers, and actually the wonderful job these people do. Like, you know, we talk about I've talked about sort of the writer and the producer and the director and all this other stuff, and even the cast. You know, we've talked about in some cases. And I've talked about sort of the special effects with the puppetry and that sort of things. And even some of the stunts are worth. We often talk about stunts when we do films. I just want to highlight set design in some of these films. The fact that they make the houses so different. They've had to do all the different Christmas decorations. You know, the differences between the Futterman home to the Peltzer home to the sheriff's office, to all the different things in town. You know, the bank, all these things. They do an absolutely fantastic job keeping up with these things, you know, sort of keeping that tone, and then having something like a simple set, like being at the convention with all the stuff going on behind them and that, but the way it's got to be set up, absolutely fantastic. So I think set designers and set dressers don't get enough, don't really get enough credit in things, and I think they should, because especially in a film like this, especially when we get to the store at the end, the final sort of the thing. So this is a Warner Brothers film. Just want to call it, this is a Warner Brothers film, and they're using Snow White, Disney's Snow White, in for this part in this, and they're all singing "Hi Ho, Hi Ho." But this film has had like Marvel, DC comics in the beginning, referencing sort of Frank Frazetta art with Conan. You've had all these different brands in it, and now you've got Disney. Like, it was, because I can't remember if Disney was on its arse this much in the 80s. Like, you'd sort of left its prime of the sort of 60s and mid 70s. So yeah, this was sort of a dead period for Disney animation. Like, it was concerned that it's crazy to think it now in 2021 when Disney sort of owns everything. That at this point, as far as I'm aware, like the 80s for Disney were a bit of a dodgy period. Like, they weren't the Goliath they are now. You know, the parks were their primary source of anything, and it was all based on nostalgia. It was all based on the nostalgia of everything from the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. And so, like, they weren't producing it in the 80s. You know, when you look at what was made in the 80s, you know, they're not massive until 88, is it, with Little Mermaid? And so it's not surprising, because obviously this same time you get Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is also, I believe, a Warner Brothers movie, which has Disney characters in it. That's 87. That's 87 or 88. So at that time, like, they were looking to be paid for the rights for things. So they were happy to do this. This would not happen today. A Warner Brothers couldn't be like, you'd get a Warner Brothers animated film, something from, you know, I don't know what their studio would be, but you'd probably have something like, you know, Everything is Awesome for the Lego movie. Gremlins all singing that. That would be what it is. How do Gremlins learn to read? Like, he looks across, Spike has now left the cinema, so he's off there, and he's now seen that there's a shop that says candy on it. How do they learn to read? Like, they get like a level of intelligence? Should Billy be done for arson? He blows up and destroys the cinema. You know, yes, he kills them all, but like, should he be done for arson? Don't know. Interesting question. This has got one of my favourite shots of this film, and this is leading up to one of my favourite shots now. So, just as it's about to go pear-shaped, because they've obviously shown thingy, and it's just a bright white screen. There you go. You get them walking past. And this is the scene. There you go. This scene here, which is clearly like a rear projection of the animated Gremlins sort of at the screen. And then you get the real ones scratching their way through. It's so well done. And popcorn tubs on their head. Like, it's like a wave. I think this was picked up, and I can't remember what year it's in. In fact, I'm going to double check it, because this is, like I've said, this is a well-made, well-produced, the special effects are absolutely excellent. One of the another film that came out that is often cited at the same time is Critters. Now, when was Critters released? 86, so that came out 2 years later. So Critters is clearly a response to this, but where this has this sort of like, where Gremlins has this sort of like tidal wave. Oh, that's a good explosion. How? So, like, they literally blow up that set, but it's used again for Back to the Future the year later. So they must rebuild so they can reuse it. That's incredible. what was I saying? But yeah, so in this, there's like this tidal wave of the Gremlins when it's coming through the cinema. But in this one, in Critters, they literally turn it into a ball. You have that ball of the critter creatures coming after you. So again, fantastic ideas, really well done. Right, so we're going into the final sort of story now. We're into the last sort of 20 minutes of the film. It's the third act now. The final showdown, and Billy versus the alpha gremlin. Because again, like this film, one of the things again, I've been focusing on the sort of the gremlins as that whatever they're sort of an analog for. But what I love them on a skateboard. So Spike coming across on a skateboard again, like just the ideas they've got for some of this, and he was carrying all the candy. One of the things I think is fun is Billy's arc in this. Again, is this idea of growing up, and where sort of It's a Wonderful Life is about sort of, you see the whole life of that character, and then he has to sort of reflect on it and is understood, what it would be like to be without him. In this film is sort of like It's a Wonderful Life, the tale is, it's about growing up and becoming your own man for Billy. That's his arc. This event is about. It starts off with him sort of like he's drawing comics, he's playing around at the bank. He's got to be that stronger man, and see, I'm actually just telling you something that's an interesting one. Actually, one of the things that's curious for this is you had the character of Gerald, who sort of like literally has dropped out the film. He's set up, and I don't know this, and I have to find out. I wonder if there's a deleted scene of him, of something happening to him, because he feels like he's set up as not an antagonist, because that's what the Gremlins are, but almost like he's an antagonist to Billy. Like he's a counter to Billy, isn't he? They're the same age, and they have that thing of they have that conversation of setting them up to show that sort of Jerry has sort of gone on. He's now sort of like vice president of the bank. He's done all this stuff, and he's looking to the future. Like he's looking to be wealthy and all sort of stuff, and that's why he's trying to sort of like get Kate. But Billy is a bit more sort of chilled out. He's sort of still stuck at home and so on and so forth. And this obviously film's about him growing up, which is what he does in the second film, that they move to New York. But it feels like there's a deleted scene, or there's a missing scene where you either see Jerry being attacked by the Gremlins, and then showing that all this stuff that he's done, that his wealth or his whatever, his position doesn't help him. Again, just want to say sort of like this part here. You go. We've got cameos from Sylvester and Bugs Bunny and E.T. So you got a nice little cameo there. So if you're not, this thing is loaded with pop culture references. It's not a modern thing. But you should have a scene of Jerry being attacked and something like with him failing, or even you should cross paths with Billy and him running away, like leaving town, doing something, to show that actually, whilst he's got this power and stuff, he's not, I don't want to say a man's man, because that sounds so horribly toxic masculinity, but like he's not doing the right thing. There is a morality in this position where he has the opportunity to help someone or save someone, or help Billy, and decides not to do it. Like there should be that to show that we know Jerry's a douchebag, but you need that payoff. Like you need to have that finishing scene with it. And it's a shame it's not in here, because you get it with all the other characters. You get Corey Feldman. It shows him looking after himself. You see the end for the Fuddermans. Mrs. Deagle gets a payoff. Like it feels like Gerald's the only one that doesn't, and I think that's a real shame. And we're going through the shops now. This is interesting. You go to sporting goods, and this is where you've got like, this is when this is the best bit for me. They're going into a sporting goods store, right? This is where it's so different. But over his shoulder there, bow and arrow. Bows and arrows on a wall. All right, now kitted up, like why he doesn't get that. He's got a baseball bat, fine. But this is where I feel like, maybe does he get a gun? I don't know if they've already had guns, but again, we can have that thing of he's got a crossbow. There you go, sporting goods store. He's got a loaded crossbow, and he figures it out. So Billy gets shot with a crossbow, and so Spike is definitely the Spike is clearly the more aggressive type of gremlin, but yeah, sporting goods store with like proper weapons in, like, you know, and a chainsaw, working chainsaw. And this is the plug-in one, isn't it? It's an electric chainsaw because it's got a big wire on it. But this is a cracking scene where it's like, you know, how good is your baseball bat that, like, or how shit is your chainsaw? I don't know which it is. That, like, you don't just cut through that baseball bat, like, you know, this is supposed to cut into a tree. Yeah, it skims across the top of a baseball bat. Here we go. Gizmo in his little remote control car. And again, let's not forget, this makes no sense. Like, I still love this film, and I'm happy. And again, you know, large scale Gizmo in that car. This makes no sense because it's clearly a remote control car. It's not a small car. It hasn't got a little engine and pedals in it. It's a remote control car with a sort of a little motor in it. Who's controlling it? I know it's very silly and it's nitpicking things, but it's always bugged me. For the rest of this film has got sort of like, they've maintained some sense of understanding, yet that bit seems to always sort of bother me a little bit. So yeah, that's my little bugbear with the end of this film, is Gizmo riding around in a remote control car as if it's a real car, like it. But this bit is where it gets really good. So I was terrified of this. Yeah, water, and he's gonna get into this pond. Get into guns. Here we go. So I knew he got a gun on sale. I noticed there the guns are on sale. So Barney goes in, sort of like, good dog, Barney. You're going in to help Billy. Woof woof. You know, so I want to know, someone must be behind the scenes with a remote control, just zipping this little thing around a supermarket, around a shopping store. That's fantastic. And woof woof. I love all this end bit's fantastic. But as you say, like, you know, Spike's now got a gun from somewhere, and it was on sale. And so, like, you know, this is the thing I find fascinating. Like, it's now gone to a garden centre. Like, it's got potted plants. They've got this water feature, and they were selling guns just next to it. Like, that baffles me in America. Like, you guys absolutely, you know, I love Americans. I don't like America. Let's put it that way. This openness of selling guns is just baffling me. So yeah, he's now got the gun, but here he comes to save the day. I'm surprised the car isn't a reference to anything, like, you know, like a Wacky Races or something in particular. I don't know. Knight Rider. Was Knight Rider out yet? Don't know. That feels like a missed opportunity. Make the dog jump. This is the bit I love. So you now see Spike's back as he is producing these babies. They're sort of knobbling up on his back, and it shows like what they'd look like as adult as gremlins giving birth. Like, they don't pop out straight away. It looks like they have got to a bit more of a gestation period, because, you know, in this, when they were mogwise, they just and off they went. This one takes a bit longer because they haven't gestated yet, and now he's like the bubbling on his back. But he gets caught in the sunlight, and this is what happens in pure sunlight. It's not just photosensitive, like, it fucking melts them. And so again, we get to this idea, like, you know, this other notion, final couple of notions. This idea of the things that hide in the dark. You know, we often say, even like, what was it, Evil Dead, you know, Dead by Dawn. Like, the prosthetics on this are fantastic. The detailing, the modelling on this, the dying Stripe is amazing, yet horrific. That's the thing that used to scare me. Like, it went blind, like, it's got white eyes. its skin's all burning away. It's incredible. But this idea of the gremlins being the thing that hide in the dark, so they can't come out in the day. You're safe in the daylight, but they are waiting for you in the dark. Is a great little sort of like horror story. This idea that like every night these things would come out, and you wouldn't be safe to sleep, to rest, because they're there in the nighttime waiting for you. Is really cool. And this final, again, you get the final jump scare, which again, just a skeletal design with ping pong ball eyes. And again, this is now badged as a 15. This is a 15. I don't know if it was when I was a kid. I watched this way too young. I was seriously thinking of showing this to Ellie, and she's 8. I won't be. I guarantee it. She's not ready for this. She'd love Gizmo. Not sure she'd be cope with the rest. The Gremlins can be. I'm pretty sure that if you were to do like a selection of things of saying, right, the Gremlins represent, and then choose something, capitalism, fear of foreign invasion, fear of the dark, whatever. You could write an article or an essay and have that supported by this film, which is a bit of a shame because it means that it's not as focused as I think it should be in its satire or in its poking at things, but it still stands up as a really good sort of festive horror comedy. More into the horror than the comedy, but sort of like has those moments, and I think it's the sort of the Looney Tunes sort of element that I think works so well. The idea of the slapstick or the ludicrousness, that sort of stands out, that works so well, especially in sort of small town America. But this, again, so we've got the return of the Chinese sort of thing, and again you got this idea of sort of like, what was it, sort of Mahatma Gandhi was once asked, what are your thoughts on Western civilization, and he was responsible it would be a good idea. This idea again of like the West is not ready to be responsible with certain ideas. This idea of like Eastern mysticism or certain things, like we shouldn't be trusted because we just turn it into something. And this film completely supports that. Like, the first notion of Ron Peltzer is was to sort of to try and sell it as a sort of one in every home, everywhere, Mogwai everywhere, and so we can't be trusted because we're not willing to. We want to buy our way through everything. Yes, comes much responsibility. And there you go. We didn't mean it. We don't understand. We never get around to it. There you go. The idea of the Eastern sort of the old Eastern ways, telling the future, the West, we're not ready. This thing of being young and sort of rambunctious, if you will, obtuse, sort of not ready, just aggressive. This idea of progress, but like progress for the idea of wealth and gain rather than betterment, if you know what I mean. It's if you can take that. There we go. Sweetest moment. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, cute little bastard. This film's fantastic. This film has been fantastic, and it does stand alone as a fantastic sort of Christmas horror film. It should be appreciated as such. I think it's everyone goes on. I'm going to say it again. Everyone talks about Die Hard, and has this thing as being sort of the Christmas action film. And it is. It's a great film. Not going to deny that. But I actually think Gremlins is a much better sort of standout as what can an alternate Christmas movie. This film actually tries for that. Like, it has those beats. It has the connections to Christmas Carol, It's a Wonderful Life. This idea that the characters have an arc, the way they learn. It has all these moments. And I think this is actually a much better sort of like closer to being an actual alternate Christmas film than Die Hard. I love Die Hard, and I can definitely make a case for Die Hard being a Christmas film. and I have done. But yes, I think this is a fantastic film. I really enjoy this. And what I would say is, well, we're going now to the Jerry Goldsmith score, because I've been listening to it throughout, and I absolutely think it's again relatively iconic. It's no John Williams, but Jerry Goldsmith does have his moments. Obviously did the Star Trek, he did the score for what became Next Gen. But this final score, dun 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 dun, coming in a second, is so this final voiceover as well. I love the idea of this sort of like fourth wall breaking monologue at the end that tells you sort of like, yeah, you've watched this film, but there might be a gremlin in your house. Going back to everything like the end of Halloween, Scrooged, which came out I think 86, 87, did a similar thing. Wonderful, love that film. But this score again, so sort of wonderfully upbeat and wonderful. Like, they didn't go for the schmaltz, which I think they could have done. So I'm just going to pause it there and just sort of wrap up. But there you go. That has been me talking about Gremlins for quite some time. So that's coming up to 1:45 now. So I'm going to leave it there. I absolutely love that film. Absolutely adore it. It's a great film. So glad I got to watch it, and we talked about different things, and sort of I tried to keep it on point. I could have just gone about different things, but I'm hoping I sort of did a bit of breakdown. Hope you gave something to think about, and let me know, what are your thoughts on Gremlins? Is it as good as I say it is? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Let me know. Does it stand up with other films? And what other films do you recommend as alternate Christmas movies? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, going to leave it right there. First and foremost, I just want to say there's a couple of things. This is the last episode of 2021 for 20th Century Geek. We'll be coming back in the new year, stronger, bigger, badder than ever, with a whole new format of things. So look out on social media and on the website for announcements about how that's going to work. But for now, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for everyone that's been listening throughout the year. All the support, so to my patrons, all my guests I've had on, anyone that's come and supported me, contacted me, or spoken to me within social media. It's been a crazy, crazy year. We've still had the COVIDs and a load of other stuff going on, in and out of work, different things, and so I appreciate everybody's support, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful, safe Christmas. And if you want to buy a great gift and you sort of want to support 20th Century Geek, there are 3 many ways to do it. Go leave a review for us. Go on your podcast catcher and leave a review. It's greatly appreciated. And any feedback, I can look at it all, and I like it all. The other thing though is I had a book come out this year, Judging Dredd, from Sequart, all about Judge Dredd. It's 12 essays and an interview with Rob Williams, writer of Judge Dredd, about Judge Dredd. It's on Amazon. I'll put a link below as a final thing for this year. But the other thing, of course, is we have a Patreon. I'll be putting a link to that below as well. But on there we have 3 tiers, fan, VIP and chief. I think it might be the right way around. And on there you have got all kinds of things. There's 30-minute thoughts, which I do monthly, which is me giving my thoughts on all kinds of things, voted for by my patrons. Weekly, we've got Trekking Through the Twilight Zone with me and Julian Darius, my co-host from Stories Out of Time and Space, doing an episode-by-episode breakdown of every episode of the Twilight Zone. And then quarterly, we have Quarterly Creator Corner, where I have somebody come on. I've had some fantastic guests. We've had Kieran Gillen come on. I've had Laura Summers come on, who's the voice of Janine from The Real Ghostbusters. Jason Impey, who's an independent filmmaker. Absolutely loved all those people. So go and check that out. There's a link below. There'll be more stuff coming to Patreon in the new year as well. And in the new year, we've got some great stuff coming up. Amazing stuff. Let me just give you a breakdown of how we're going to do it. Every quarter, we're going to have a bit of a rotation. We're going to be having 4 Desert Island comics. We're going to do a new one called Storytime with 20th Century Geek, which you've already started to test, which is talking with somebody about a short story, from a genre short story from the 20th century. We're also going to be having Then and Again, where I sit down with somebody and we talk about an original film and its remake, how they compare, which one's better, why they changed them, that sort of thing. And of course, we'll be keeping with those retrospectives. So, ladies and gentlemen, anyway, thank you for all your support this year. I greatly appreciate it. And we shall see you in the new year. Stay safe. Have a very Merry Christmas. And I'll talk to you on the next episode.